KC Joyner as he joins us to come in with some great analysis and numbers as he does each week at this time. Hi, Casey. How are you?
Good. Just thinking about Carrie Fisher's, hoping everything goes okay with her.
I'll tell you what, Casey, I've got a little bit of a raspy voice, too. So Josh is going to help me out and ask some questions as well. But I do have one right off the get-go. And the first and foremost question is Lane Johnson and what impact he had on the Eagles' attack last night when he was back in that football game.
I tell you, well, the impact that he had was that the Eagles were still able to run the ball. They didn't run the ball in a fantastic way last night. They did a good job, and they had a couple of good plays, especially early in the game. They had some good breaking runs. Their good blocking was a step back versus Baltimore. Baltimore was a season high for them, so that's not surprising to see that happen. But the thing that happened is being able to run the ball even effectively against a powerful Giants defense made up for the fact that Philadelphia only threw 6 vertical passes last night. Vertical passes where you're throwing it 11 or more yards downfield. That's the lowest number this year, and it's the second lowest number the Eagles have thrown in the last 3 seasons. So, and we can tell why they scaled back on the vertical passes, but being able to lean on the running game with having Johnson back, that makes all the difference if you can to make up for the vertical passing.
We had John McMullen on the show with us in the first couple hours, and he's our Eagles guy. He goes up to all the games at the NovaCare Complex, and he got into it a little bit, Casey, on whether or not there's actually more of an issue with Carson Wentz, and does he have an arm strength issue, or is it just rookie fatigue at this point? What do you think about Carson Wentz? Because we really haven't seen him be able to throw the deep ball.
Yeah, and the thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a rookie thing, and both an arm strength thing and a rookie thing. Because there was the pass, I want to say, in the fourth quarter where there was one long pass and receiver was open, and he just lobbed it out there, and the Giants, I think it was the Giants linebacker, crossed underneath it and could have easily had an interception, but he dropped it. And you look at that throw and go, that wasn't a bad decision. If you look at it right at first, it was a bad decision. Like, no, he just underthrew that pass, and he underthrew it by a lot. So, I mean, the first quarter when he threw that one interception or near interception where I think it was DRC intercepted and stepped out of bounds, that one he shouldn't have thrown. It was after the scramble and things. That was, his arm strength looked good there, but not later in the game. But I would say this, Eli Manning over the past few years has had times where his arm strength has been where he's had trouble later in the season and such, where he kind of gets pitched out and things. So I wouldn't be surprised if Wentz in his first NFL season is maybe hitting a bit of the rookie ball in Week 16.
Casey, from your experience watching quarterbacks, is typically an arm strength issue like an anatomical issue, like it's something either guys have or don't have, or can that be strengthened or gotten better through improving mechanics and improving strength as the guys get older?
I think it is. Well, it is something that you want to. It is a physical strength thing. You've got to have the physical strength to do it. But I remember doing a study on Chad Pennington a few years back, probably 8 years ago now. And Pennington was known for being a noodle-armed quarterback. And the thing is, the Jets found ways. If you looked at his vertical numbers, though, they were really good vertical numbers. I looked at why in the world he has such good vertical numbers, even though he's supposed to be a weak-armed quarterback. And the Jets had found ways to tailor their play calling to what he could do. They didn't ask him to make certain types of throws, or if they did ask him to say, okay, we're going to have you make this type of throw, it was when the coverages were just perfect for it. So, yeah, even if the ball took an extra quarter second to get there, he'd be all right because of the way the play calling was. So I think the Eagles right now have said them, again, if you're only throwing 6 vertical passes, and I know their running game is really good, so I get leaning on the running game right now, but if you're only throwing 6 vertical passes, it's a sign that you don't trust your quarterback for one reason or another. And the bad decision in the first quarter, I bet when the Eagles go, we don't want to make him throw a lot of vertical passes. But then again, he hits the pass to Aguilar. I mean, and that was a beautiful pass, and that was a longer pass downfield. So I think maybe they just kind of picked their spots too.
On that play when Wentz scrambled around, played Houdini, then threw the interception downfield, all I kept thinking in my head was, Casey, oh my goodness, it's Brett Favre all over again. I mean, I haven't seen a quarterback do that, pull out of one guy, get away from another, scramble around, look 20 different directions, flick it downfield, and he threw an interception just like Favre used to in the mid-90s.
It's funny. I've done studies on quarterbacks who scramble, and you find that because people talk about like the scrambling quarterback, saying the scrambling quarterbacks, that's the way to go. You want a quarterback who can threaten the defense most. But Marcus Mariota this year, he's got a lot of wheels. He's got some speed to him, and I think he's second in the league in scramble yardage. He's averaging 12 yards on scrambles per game. It's so there's no value in the rushing part of it, and then the passing part. If you look at the entire league, I remember a couple years ago I did a study and found that everybody except Aaron Rodgers and Ben Roethlisberger were just horrible on scrambling passes. Like, if you scrambled, don't even bother throwing the ball. Throw it away, run it for 2 yards. Just forget about the scramble pass, because their completion percentages were low, the yards per attempt were low, and they were throwing a ton of interceptions, except for Rodgers and Roethlisberger. And I don't think that Wentz is in that category yet. He's not in those guys' category. So when you scramble, go get 2 or 3 yards, or throw the ball out of bounds, or do something. Don't try and force those passes, because what happened there with that DRC near pick, that's going to keep happening.
Flipping over to the defense, speaking of interceptions, Malcolm Jenkins had 2 interceptions in the game. One of them was on a great play, and the other one just seemed like a bad read by Eli. Talk about what the Eagles' defense was doing to frustrate the Giants' passing game.
They literally they sat back in coverage and dared Eli to throw is what they did. And I think they said, Eli, we think that we can get a bad Eli performance out of you. Here's the thing. The Giants last night threw 20 vertical passes. It's a season high for them by far. The highest they had thrown prior to that was 12. Actually, let's take it back. 20 vertical passes when the Eagles did not blitz. They threw 21 total. The Eagles blitzed on 1 vertical pass, and Eli threw 20 vertical passes, and the Eagles did not blitz. Coming into the game, Eli was averaging 10.1 yards per attempt when he was not blitzed and he threw a vertical pass. 10.1 yards. Pretty good number. Last night, the Eagles hold him to 4.7. He tries 20 vertical passes, and the Eagles don't blitz. He only completes 5 for 93 yards, and he had 2 picks. I think the Eagles just sat back in coverage and said, look, we know we can't leave our cornerbacks on an island, so, okay, we're just going to sit back in coverage. We're going to make you play we're going to see if you can be good Eli tonight, because we think we can handle your running game, generally speaking, with our front 7, and we don't have to keep you honest there. So we're just going to sit back in coverage and say, fine, go ahead and read. We think we make you make mistakes, and they made him make mistakes.
Talking with KC Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider, also Fantasy Football Insider. You can follow him on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS. KC, sticking with the defense, a guy who I was watching last night who I think had a major impact on this game. Yeah, the Eagles didn't load up on sack numbers and forced fumble numbers, but the impact that Brandon Graham had. Talk about what you saw in the game about the impact Brandon Graham had.
Yeah, I think the Eagles, again, they're getting to the point the Eagles are where it's out of necessity they're having to ask their front wall to get the pass rush. So that's what you want anyway. You want to have what they call an honest pass rush, where you're not having to send extra blitzers. And I think that the kind of pass rush that he was able to get and the kind of things he was able to do up front to get enough disruptions, enough pressures to where maybe you're not going to get pressures on every play, and maybe you're not going to be able to get the impact plays you might get on if you're blitzing and such. Because I mean, the Eagles didn't blitz on those 20 vertical passes, and that's a lot of passes to be able to say the quarterback had enough time to throw 20 vertical passes and we didn't blitz. That says that he's getting out of a lot of passes, but still I think they were able to get enough pressure and get enough duress on the quarterback that it was able to do enough on the pass rush to where you didn't have to say, okay, now we feel like we have to blitz. We feel like we're getting enough pressure up front.
Looking at the Giants, a team that really needed, a win to finalize. They can still make the playoffs. ESPN, I saw on SportsCenter, said this morning they still have a 99% chance of making the postseason. But did the Eagles expose the Giants? Did they give a blueprint on how to beat this team last night?
I think they did. I think, one, they said, look, the Giants have a solid rush defense, but they don't have a great rush defense. And as good as their pass defense is, if you can keep the ball on the ground. Like, I'm looking at the Cowboys and the Giants, and the Giants beat the Cowboys twice this year, but the Eagles said, hey, look, we can run the ball on the ground. We can get that going. We can get enough. We can hit a play in the vertical passing game, and that's big. But we can also just sit back in coverage, because if you think, and the Eagles have a good front 7, and they're good at stopping the running game. But if I'm projecting to the playoffs, looking at it, going, okay, well, if the Giants had to play Green Bay's had a pretty good rush defense this year. Seattle's solid on the ground. I mean, there's a couple of matchups to where they do pretty well. But I'm looking at going, okay, Giants, you're not going to have a lot of games where you're going to be able to just force the defense to be honest that way. So I think the Eagles as said, we're going to be able to sit back in coverage, and the Giants' rushing game can't get it done unless Paul Perkins can step it up like he did some last night, but he hasn't been the guy. If they can't get one of those guys to step up and play great, I think you're talking about an average rushing attack, and you don't want to have an average rushing attack heading into the postseason.
How much was it a big deal not having Janoris Jenkins out there in the game?
He's a shutdown corner. I mean, when you're playing the Eagles, you probably don't have to have a shutdown corner, so it's a plus. The Eagles only threw 6 vertical passes, so again, they're not testing it out there. But he's the kind of guy who I tend to think that we overvalue shutdown cornerbacks and think, okay, if we get a shutdown cornerback, it shuts down the other team's passing game. It usually doesn't. It just keeps it from keeps teams from putting up phenomenal numbers. You'll take a really what I consider a blue rated receiver, like an elite blue chip receiver, and you take him down one notch. It's helpful. But last night they didn't necessarily need him. But if they get to the playoffs, and they probably will, like I said, 99% chance. You start playing any of these teams, you start playing Dallas, you got to have a shutdown corner against Dez. You're going to play Atlanta, you need one against Julio. I think you're going to need one pretty much any matchup that you're going to get in the playoffs. You're going to have one of those shutdown corners. So not having him is a big loss for them.
Case, let's look over some of the games this weekend. Before we get to them, I want to ask you about the Cowboys. Because of the Eagles' win, they have clinched the NFC East. They also have a home field advantage now. But Dallas is not known for having a great home field record historically over the last several years. So what do you think of the Cowboys moving forward into the playoffs?
I think they need to keep playing their players. I think they don't need to rest players. I remember back to Vince Lombardi. I'm going back way back now. And it was before my day, but I remember reading about where he had a game, I think it was in his last championship season, and the Packers traveled out west, and they had to play the Rams, and it was a meaningless game, and he coached his team up to play that game like it really meant something, and the Packers almost won the game, and it was one of Lombardi's proudest efforts out of his teams because they had nothing to play for, and they still played exceptionally well against a playoff caliber team, and I think he wanted to do that to say, we're playing at a good level, and I don't want to give the team the thought that they can take a step back, because if they do, they're going to lose that edge. I think Dallas needs to say, we need to win these last two games. It doesn't matter if we've clinched home field. We need to keep, and we don't need to worry about staying healthy. We need to tell these players you need to keep playing at this level, because we're already going to have a bye week anyway. So we're already going to have a week where we're going to be able to get a little bit rusty. And if we try and extend it out and say go 3 weeks without keeping our starters out there, they're definitely going to get some rust. So if I'm Dallas, I keep going, foot to the floor and keep going full speed.
Let's do some quick hits on these games. Falcons and Panthers are one of the games at 1 p.m. Do the Falcons seal the deal and get the South?
I think they do. I still don't trust the Panthers secondary. They've played a lot better of late, but I still think they can be exploited in their secondary. Problem is that if Julio's not good to go, or Julio is slowed down, it might hurt Atlanta's passing attack, but I don't think Carolina can keep up in a shootout.
Dolphins are not historically a team that plays well in the North, but they did beat the Jets, on Thursday night. Saturday night, should I say? So I ask you, can the Dolphins get a playoff spot by beating the Bills?
I think they can, but it depends on if the Bills keep playing for Ryan, because it looks like Ryan is out. But I think they will play for Ryan, and the Bills would love nothing more than to ruin the Dolphins' season. And I live here in Central Florida, and having been following that, the Dolphins have been losing those kinds of games for decades now. So I would not be surprised to see Buffalo win that.
We saw the Packers have trouble with the Bears last week. Will the Redskins have similar troubles this week?
I think not, because I think the Packers have more weaknesses in their secondary than Washington does. Although for Washington last week, they looked like they didn't want to play. It looked like they just went through the motions, and you're not going to win if you go through the motions. So if Washington gets back to playing with some energy, I think they'll win the game. But I think they don't have the kind of secondary weaknesses that Green Bay has. Can
the Browns get their first win of the season versus the Chargers?
I don't think so. You start grading their players, and you can look at all the metrics. I mean, they're not just like bad in one or two areas; they're pretty much bad everywhere. Defense, pass blocking, special teams. I mean, there's not an area where you can look at it and say, this is a team that if they play well here, they're going to win, because they don't play well anywhere. So unless San Diego lays an egg, no, I think Cleveland's going 0-15.
Also looking at the schedule, a lot of these games are on Saturday. You only have 2 games on Sunday because it's Christmas. Titans go to Jacksonville. Titans are trying to fight to get in the division. But do we expect the Jaguars to play with a little extra energy without the head coach there? Yeah,
I did an article for ESPN's Insider section. It was a fantasy football-centric article talking about Marcus Mariota. He scored 11 points in the last 2 games, and you'd think the Jaguars would be a favorable matchup for him. Jaguars rank 4th in yards per attempt. They've allowed fewer vertical attempts and fewer vertical pass completions than any team in the league. I think it's a really bad matchup for the Jaguars. I think it is a classic trap game. I think they still win, but wouldn't it be shocked to see the Jaguars, whose players are now going to be playing, to put some tape on for the next coach? I think they're going to be fired up to play, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Tennessee struggle.
Buccaneers travel to the Saints. We saw the Saints put up a lot of points on the Cardinals last week. Buccaneers are 5-2 on the road. They're actually a better road team than at home. They're averaging almost 3 more points on the road than at home. Can the Bucs win in New Orleans?
The Bucs have an exceptional pass rush, and it's been doing very well for them. I think that the Saints are going to be able to. I think they're going to be able to neutralize that because I think they're going to see what the Bucs did to get a pass rush the last time around when they struggled in Tampa, and I think that when Tampa goes up there, I think it's going to be a different story. I would not be surprised to see New Orleans get some good pass blocking. If they do, Tampa's secondary is very suspect, and it turns into a shootout that I think Tampa loses.
Vikings and Packers. A lot of Eagles fans are cheering for the Packers because they want the Vikings to keep losing so they get a better draft pick. Do you expect the Packers to seal the deal with the Vikings?
Yeah, the Vikings, I mean, they've got so many issues now. Their run defense hasn't been anywhere near as good as it was earlier in the year. Their running game might be the worst in the league. Maybe if it's not the worst, it's pretty darn close. The Vikings don't really have any kind of a passing game, and Bradford's better than what he's shown. But when you don't have a running game to keep the defense honest, you're really neutralizing him. I just see a lot of places where the Vikings are starting to falter. So I'd be surprised if Minnesota won this game.
Colts and Raiders. So are you taking the over in that game?
Which one?
Colts and Raiders.
The Colts and Raiders. Colts and Raiders, yeah, I would probably be taking the over in that one. I think that's definitely going to be a shootout kind of game. People think that somehow that Andrew Luck is, I've been talking to people on Twitter and things, and they're not really sold on Luck. And I'm like, look, I don't think the Raiders' defense is as exceptional. The only problem is is Carr's finger. Is he going to keep playing like he has the past couple weeks? Because if he's still slow by that finger, then I would take the under there. But I'm thinking that matchup is going to let him get the over.
Can the Texans seal the deal on their division versus the Bengals?
I think they can. I think to say Savage is a better vertical passer than Osweiler is kind of a slap in the face because Osweiler is maybe the worst vertical passer in the league. But
yeah, you're better than the worst guy. Good job.
Yeah, I think he might actually be a significant step up. I think he might be. I don't mean this in an insulting way, but he might be just, say, a mid-tier passer. Might be like, even if he was like instead of 32, if he's 19, if he's a little below average, it's still a huge step up. But that's a gargantuan step up because the rest of the team in every other way is really good, and that's the one thing that's holding them back. So, yeah, I think it's going to make a big difference for them, and I think it could allow Houston to make some noise in the playoffs if Savage is even just average.
One of the more intense rivalries in the NFL is the Ravens versus Steelers. What can we expect from that game on Christmas Day?
Well, Jimmy Smith is out, so it looks like he's out. So that's going to be an issue for them. The Steelers, by the way, are getting healthy too, and they're getting players, putting some players back. And I think the Ravens have more weaknesses. The Ravens have a rush defense that's really good, and they always play the Steelers tough. So I always find it difficult to say the Steelers are going to do very well. But I look at the Ravens secondary and go, okay, they have some weaknesses there that can be exploited. And Pittsburgh's been leaning on its ground game. I'm feeling it's probably going to lean a little more on its passing game, and I think it's going to lead to success for them.
Broncos and Chiefs on Sunday night. Chiefs pretty much can lock up a playoff spot by beating the Broncos, and they could potentially knock the Broncos out of the playoffs as well. How crazy is that, Casey, that both teams, this will be the first time both teams who played in the Super Bowl will not make it the next year since the Raiders and Buccaneers?
Yeah, it's that kind of a down year for those teams. You kind of, with Denver, the change in quarterback might be a reason for it, but then again, when Peyton wasn't playing well, he was one of the worst vertical passers last year, so it's kind of surprised that they've not been able to do it. But the Broncos are hurting in their run defense. They've lost a couple people in their front seven, this Trevathan and one of the defensive linemen, and they're just, I think Malik Jackson, and they've lost those guys, and they're just not very good. They've given up 100 or more yards to opposing running backs. I believe it's in 7 of the last 9 games. That's just not, that's not the kind of run defense you have to have. So teams don't have to go after that awesome secondary or face that awesome pass rush because they can just sit there and say, fine, we'll run the ball 35 times. In Kansas City, they'll run the ball 35 times. So I like Kansas City in that one.
Lions play the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Matthew Stafford is actually from Dallas. He went to high school in the Dallas area. He's 2-0 in his career versus the Cowboys with 4 touchdowns, one of them rushing, but throw 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. So he's done pretty well against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys have already made the playoffs. Could the Cowboys maybe rest some guys in the second half, allowing the Lions to win that game?
I wouldn't be surprised to see Dallas should not take their eye off the ball. They really should keep going. I wouldn't be surprised to see them say, okay, we're not going to play quite as hard. And the thing is Detroit probably going to be missing Slay, their best cornerback. And if he's out, that should allow Dallas to open up the passing game. So it might be one of those situations where, like used to of New England the past couple of years, where maybe they play for a half or three quarters and then take their starters out. So it's a matter of what they can do in this half and three quarters. If I'm taking that as a situation, though, I'm still taking Detroit in that one because I think Detroit's got a lot of ways to go after a Dallas defense that's good, but I don't think they're as good as their stats show because their offensive line's protecting them.
KC Joyner with us, ESPN Senior NFL and Fantasy Football Insider. And Casey, first of all, thanks to Josh, by the way, for carrying that as my voice is stronger all of a sudden since I got a minute or two just to listen to you guys. Some news coming out on Twitter just now, Casey, that Todd Bowles was admitted to the hospital. He won't travel with the team. He's currently listed as stable, but it's unclear of his status for tomorrow. Boy, this NFL, this league, these coaches, who was it, Bruce Arians earlier in the year, and we've seen Wade Phillips go down after he got hit. And I mean, it's tough for the coaches too.
Yeah, it is, and I'm reminded every time I see all these coaches having these physical issues. I'm reminded of a couple things. Back in the '80s, Paul Brown, Sam Wyche had a really bad season, and it was almost people were thinking he was going to fire Sam Wyche. And Brown said later on that what he actually did after the season is he took Wyche aside and said, "You know what you need to do? Go spend some time with your wife. Take a little time off. Don't be working 7 days and spending every hour in the office because when you're well rested, you're a better coach." And I just think that the NFL, if you look through history and things, that you can find guys like a Bud Grant, you can find guys like some people of that nature, even Tom Landry.
Dick Vermeil, burnout in Philadelphia.
Burnout, but you can find a lot of coaches who didn't do that. You can find Paul Brown didn't go to burnout. He wasn't that kind of a coach. Or a lot of coaches, they work really hard, but not 7 days a week hard. It's go home, spend time with your wife, spend time with your kids, and there's a lot of coaches who've had a lot of success doing that, and I think that if the NFL would adopt that approach, we'd probably have healthier coaches.
Exactly what we will let you do, Casey, as we get to the Christmas break here. We're a couple days before Christmas. I will bring it full circle and say that while you were talking to Josh, I saw on Twitter about Carrie Fisher, and I now understand what you were speaking about with her. Of course, we hope that she is okay because Carrie Fisher, if you're a Star Wars fan, well, quite frankly, that's Princess Leia, so we can't have her going down. Now, KC Joyner with us each and every week on the Sports Bash. And KC, we're live one show next week, next Thursday, so I'll let you and Josh figure out the logistics, but hopefully we can catch up with you next week for sure. KC Joyner, thank you so much for the time, pal. We always appreciate the insight. You know me, my favorite word is metrics.
There you go. It's a good word. So have a good metric Christmas then.
Sounds good. KC Joyner. We really appreciate it. And Josh does too. We appreciate it.